was being made.
So did the family then nearly fall apart, considering that he was the only one to be Conservative or to be Labour?
That's what he wanted to be, you know. So, I mean, we'd always been concerned. My mother and my brother was terrific, you know. That's why he hadn't got any time for Ken because of what he was. But no, it was up to Ken if he wanted to be that, you know. But, I mean, I was until a few years ago, then I changed.
And Ken obviously is known for his being a bit unpredictable and being...
Right, yes.
Yes, but do you ever get embarrassed by some things that maybe
I
said?
do. Some things have been said. Years ago, I used to get upset more than embarrassed, you know.
Like what?
That time when he wouldn't go to the wedding, the royal wedding. I thought that was awful. He should have gone. No, he should have gone. I think that was awful.
Do you think now you should have gone, Ken?
Oh,
I think he does now.
I don't think anyone remembers. What Mum used to get hurt by was the press criticism. She sort of opened the paper.
And people, you know, who you'd meet when I got up the betting shop in the afternoon, things like that. People say, oh, your son this, and you know, it used to upset me more than embarrass me, really. I just wish he wouldn't do things like that.
So did you used to tell him off?
Yes, I should not tell him off. I just used to tell him how I felt about it.
I used to be hilarious because Mum would come up to lunch at County Hall and be the members' room. You see all the other members and chief officers looking at amazement at Mum saying, you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that.
And did you as a matter of interest pay attention to what she was saying?
I was always worried that because Mum was living in Lincoln, she was hurt by the press and what she should see in that. But at the end of the day, no, you've got to do what you thought was right. I mean, my father was very strong about that. I mean, because in the 1950s, it was an unusual home because Mum and Dad were completely equal. They discussed everything. No one was in charge. Yeah. And that was well ahead of its time. And me and my sister were brought up. They expected both of us to do well. It wasn't like I was given
We agreed on
attention.
everything, Bob and I. We never, ever argued. We just sort of, you know, together.
Do you think that was partly because you had been a performer yourself, were a performer, and that you had your own job, you were very much your own person?
Yes, maybe. We liked everything. We loved shows, we loved going dancing, we just loved everything. We even liked the same food, you know. There was nothing that really we didn't like.
Because you think about it, Mum, between the two wars, was from the age of 15 on her own in digs, travelling with the theatre company. It's very unusually sort of bold life for a young girl in between the wars.
Did you feel that you missed out a bit because your father was away so much?
It was the first 5 years he was a merchant sailor, and therefore I grew up in an all-woman household. It was my grandmother, my mother and my younger sister. And I suspect some of my right-wing critics would say that's where I got all my loopy politics, you know, things like that. But Dad was only away for the first 5 years. I think what I miss most is my father died when, just as I got elected to the council, I was 26.
Just as everything
would have gone really well, and it just seems, he was only 56 years old.
We just bought this cottage in Lincoln, we were going up there, and a month before we moved in, he was gone. That was dreadful.
I don't think there's ever a day that passes when I don't think what my father would have thought or what my father would have done.
Be pleased.
You assume when someone dies that 10 or 20 years later that the memory will fade, and it doesn't, you know. No. Sometimes I dream and he is there as he was, but taking part in the things I'm doing today.
Yeah, which is interesting. Now, what do you think is the most valuable thing, perhaps, that your mother has ever said to you or done for you?
I think it's just that security. The knowledge that you grew up in a home where you were loved, where parents had time for you. I think in retrospect I would have been happier if they'd let me stay up a bit later.
I thought, does he still need a little bit of mothering from time to time?
Oh yes. Sometimes I tell him what to do.
I don't think that'll ever stop, but just for the moment, thank you both very much indeed. Ethel and Ken Livingston, thank you. Now, my next two guests are a mum and daughter. They were split up when Mum went to live in Holland, leaving her 8-year-old daughter with Dad in Sweden. Nowadays, they live just 20 miles apart, and I'm quite sure you'll have no problem telling that they are family. So will you welcome television presenter Ulrika Johnson and her mum, Gun Brody. Actually, it's interesting. I was just watching Ulrika on the television the other day thinking, you know, how very confident she is. Now, was she terribly extrovert as a child as well?
Always extrovert. From the time she could start walking and talking, she was off doing everything that was going. If we were on holiday and you met another family, she would be off with that family and not be with us at all. She's always been an extrovert, yes.
As I just said, Ulrika, she was only 8 actually when you left the marriage and left the home as such. And what were the circumstances for that?
Well, I was separated from Ulrika's father, and I met a man that I fell in love with, and he worked in Holland. He worked for associated companies, and my head office was in Holland, in Amsterdam. So I decided to move down, and I don't know how I did it now, because everybody was against me at the time. My father and mother was against me, and my sister, all my friends. And the only one really who supported me was Ulrika's father, and I wasn't really worried about leaving Ulrika. Maybe I was selfish, I don't know, but it's, you know. But I had good contact with her while I was living away.
But it's a very heart-searching decision, obviously, to leave, for a mother to leave her child, you know.
Yes,
so what was going through your own head at that time?
I just was so sure that that was the thing to do at the time, that I never really worried about it. I never worried that Ulrika would miss me. When I finally...
why was that?
I don't know. I was just so sure that that was the right thing to do. When I was living apart from her, it was awful. Certainly in Holland you see a lot of blonde children. They're looking very much like Ulrika, and I often burst into tears on the streets just seeing them because I missed her so much.
So Ulrika, what do you remember about Mum leaving?
I don't remember a lot really. I can remember suddenly she sort of wasn't there. It was like a long holiday for me, really, that she was going away on a long holiday. The most significant fact was that she took her hairdryer with her, and that to me meant that she wasn't going to come back for some time. And then I was left to become sort of wife to my father almost, and mother in the household, to sort of look after things and to do all the chores. So I can't remember actually understanding what was going on, and in many ways I do think that was quite a good thing, because if I had understood it at an older age, I might have found it more difficult to take in.
But presumably because you didn't understand it, that must be something in a way that's haunted you for your whole life.
Yes, I mean, I must say when my mother left at that age, I mean, I didn't at all sort of question her leaving. It's kind of, children tend to be, or at least I was quite sort of adaptable. I sort of thought, okay, this is the new situation sort of thing. This is how we deal with this. Not mature in any way, but that's just what I was faced with. But then when I grew older and I sort of suddenly began to think, why did she leave me, you know, and how would things have been if I had gone with her or if she had stayed? And I mean, at that stage I still wanted my parents to stay together, you know, that was the thing, to try and get them together. You know, when you come back next time to visit, bring your hairdryer, because then, you know, you won't have to go back and get it. But the best thing about it was that both my parents, I must say this, never spoke badly about each other in front of me, which I think is very important indeed, because I never felt that I was letting either side down. My father said, look, you do what's, you know, lay it all on me, but you do what's best, or, you know, I won't be sorry if I'll miss you, but, you know, if you really want to go, that's fine. My mother was saying, if you don't want to come, that's fine, and that made it more difficult in many ways. But
on the other hand, if you're being really truthful, because obviously you've been forced to analyse this a lot, you know, in recent times, and you've got married yourself, have you ever really forgiven your mother for leaving you for those 4 years?
I'm not sure that she's sort of asking for forgiveness, because you never
No, that's
really
not what I'm asking. I'm not saying did your mother ask you for forgiveness.
No.
Have you forgiven her inside?
Go on. I don't know. I wish she'd been with me. I really do. I would probably be slightly different as a person. I mean, I think I've learned a lot from being on my own, but I wish I'd had that security. Yeah, I do.
And what difference do you think that might have made?
I don't know. I really don't know. But I think what was lacking was sort of the support that you get from two parents, like turning up for school events and things like that, and you don't have that, and you don't have the reliability, and I think I would have felt that I could depend upon people a lot more, whereas now I'm a terrible worrier, and I worry about things, and I think I would have been a lot calmer.
And Gun, do you still have a lot of guilt because you weren't there?
No, I don't. I don't really.
Not at all?
No, I don't, because I feel Ulrika and I have a very good relationship now. We had a good relationship when I was away, because I did call her a lot and I went up to see her, and every time I visited, I went to took her to the doctor and took her to the teacher, and I had that contact. much more than a lot of other parents that are separated from their children. So I don't really feel like that. I mean, I
It
obviously
was right for you at
spoiled
the
her.
time as well.
I spoiled her every time I saw her because that's the natural thing, I think. But
And you've got 2 young children,
Yes, I
your
do
second
now,
marriage now.
yes, yeah.
Now, do you, Ulrika, notice, a tremendous difference, obviously? Do you feel resentful almost in the fact that these children are getting a lot of attention?
Well, I love them so much, so I would never I don't feel towards them any sort of jealousy or anything like that. They're almost like my own children, because I was 15 when Christian was born and 18 when Kelly was born, so I feel very maternal towards them. But of course I do. I mean, my mother is suddenly at home. When I was born, she went to work straight away, and I was in a creche, in a kindergarten or whatever, and there taken to horse riding lessons and ballet lessons or whatever else, and I never had that, and that's the sort of thing that...
I know you said that when we bought a piano for my son to learn to play the piano, Ulrika said, I never got to learn to play the piano when I was little.
So, well, I suppose it's natural that the resentment would continue there.
Yes, well...
Well, I'm very pleased you've been able to join us on the programme. I know you're going to say, so Gun and Ulrika, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Temporarily.
Thank you.
Well, now we welcome father and daughter, both of whom tread the boards. Now, he's one of Britain's most popular actors. He's played both television, comedy and classical theatre. He's probably best known, though, for his part in this tale of 2 families.
Margot.
Yes?
Thanks, sexy.
It was silly.
Well done, my hero!
I say, it wore on you, did it? Are we the happiest Tom and Barbara in the world?
Easily.
Right, go and sober up. Put your working clothes on. We've got a prison camp to build.
Oh, welcome home, Mickey. Oh, thank God he made it.
And listen, if you ever let on I didn't make it, and you're not Pinky and Perky, it's sausage time.
Here he is, Richard Byers and his daughter Lucy. I've met everybody before. Yes, it takes so long just to meet everybody, doesn't it, at the moment? Actually, Richard, obviously you've seen those clips hundreds of times. What I want to ask you, was life in the Byers household just a trifle different to the good life?
Oh, yes. I mean, I was very much... I mean, they said, would you like to have done what you did? And I will say, well, I would have been really on the side of Margot and Jerry. I'd have moved. So I don't want people milking goats at 6 in the morning. They were an appalling couple when you think it's dreadful. I'm so glad I'm much older and more sensible now.
Now, I gather that your father was shocked and surprised when you started to actually do well in the acting business.
He's very surprised. But because in those days, everyone had to be terribly good looking at 6'2" and, have sex appeal and things, and that was sort of not really in the back drawer. So, luckily I had the one talent to be sort of, some people said, rather amusing. And so I was able to make a living at it. But he was very surprised. Of course, they adored The Good Life. I mean, that was, thank goodness, one of the most popular shows. Everyone seemed to like it. So they were, and when Lucy was young at school, she never got sent up very much because they liked the program so much. That,
it's all right, that. But I understand that, therefore, that your family were terribly against you going into it originally.
They were frightened, it was a long time ago, in those days, very frightened. And everybody was, they said, get a regular job because you'll be unemployed. But of course, since then, we're all unemployed, I mean, the acting profession is the same as any other now. Everyone's worried about what's going to happen next week.
So when Lucy then showed this great interest of going into the theatre, how did you react?
Well, I was said, very pompously, as I am, if you want to do it, don't. But if you have to do it, then do it. And she had to. We should take her to the theatre, and she used to get very emotional coming home. And I thought, well, she's a bit young to want the job that badly. But actually, it was the building, it was the actual being in a theatre that got her emotionally upset. It was extraordinary. And she was almost pining to be in that building rather than in the play. Very odd.
Is that what it was, Lucy? A pining to be there?
Yeah, it was a sort of desperation. I always felt that I wanted to be there, and I was only sort of 6 or 7 years old, and I knew I couldn't. I think it's also having an older sister. You always wanted to be doing what your older sister was doing, I mean, I had this burning desire to be a brownie, when I was sort of 4 years old, and my mother kept on saying, you can't until you're 7 or something, And it was always that. I mean, I've always been like that. I've always wanted to be there before I can be there.
So when Dad was a bit lukewarm about this whole, theatrical profession thing, was it a bit difficult for you to wear him down?
I don't think, I wouldn't describe him being lukewarm. I think he just warned me about it, and so did my mother, you know. But I mean, I would have done it even if they both said, no, you can't.
You knew that,
I would have
did you
just,
not?
Oh, great parental influence there, yes.
no, I mean, they always knew that whatever I wanted to do, I would do it regardless of what they were going to say.
The whole family's theatrical. The film is Anne, my wife, she's an actress. My sister Jane's an actress. And it would be nice to have somebody in the house. At one time she was, because she's very bright, unlike me, academically. She was very bright, she really is. And she was going to be a marine biologist at one time. I thought, that's wonderful, because we can talk about something else. You know,
Other than
alligators or
theatre,
something. Anything rather than, you know, what are you doing tonight, laddie? I'm going to the Garrick Club, you know. And what play are you, what theatre? It's a very insular life. It's a very narrow life, the theatre. But there you are.
And do you all just talk theatre in the house
Oh, yeah.
now?
Yes,
Really boring.
unfortunately, yes. It is actually. It's very boring, yes. But no, we do. I mean, you know, you can't help it. You do talk about your work, you know.
Yeah.
But are you pressurised now to try and match up to a family tradition or a family popularity?
I think it would have been very difficult if I'd been a boy. I think it would have made it much harder. But because I'm, you know, the opposite sex, I can get away with it a bit. I mean, of course, everyone expects me to be funny, you know, which is a bit of a pressure. You know, that's a bit intimidating. But no, I mean, I don't get that much pressure at all.
Now, clearly, Richard, you had to be away a lot when your children were small.
West End, a lot of West End plays in those days to keep the economy going. A lot of long runs, which are very boring.
So at the time, I mean, you didn't worry about being away a lot. You weren't thinking, oh gosh, I'm being away from the family and I'm missing all this
Anne never
growing
had
up.
the commercial luck that I had. She worked and she's still an actress, but never had the commercial breaks, which we all need. And so, you know, she was very much of a balanced household, in fact, a very old-fashioned household. The chap went out to get the, you know, the roast beef, and the mother gave them the love. Unfortunately, you know, we have a remarkable wife and mother, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Long-suffering. So, thank goodness she's still got a career.
So did you find then, because Dad was out of the house a lot, that in a way everything transferred to Mum because she was the one who was there all the time to deal with it?
I think so. I mean, Mum was the, you know, the sort of rock in the household, and that actually became a joke, didn't it? Mum was the rock. And it was a very female household because I had an au pair as well and my older sister. And, you know, Daddy was away practically all the time, and even if he was working in London, you know, he would come back after I'd gone to bed, and in the morning when I went to school he would be in bed. So I mean, I hardly ever saw him, you know.
Did you hate that aspect? Did you hate him being away so much?
No, again, because it was what I'd been brought up with. I mean, I think it did delay the development of our relationship. I mean, we are now very, you know, much closer than we used to be, and in fact, it's sort of developing even now, which is lovely, and I think is better, because when a child becomes an adult, you can understand your parents more anyway, and so I think it's a better grounding for a good relationship.
So sorry?
Happy ending.
Happy ending. Oh, I do like happy endings, don't you? How alike do you think you are in traits, personality?
Very alike.
Very alike. Yeah. We could clash, I mean, we have clashed.
Oh, very badly.
Oh, but what sort of thing?
Well, we have, you see, we're both impatient, irascible, lovely moaning. I love a good moan.
Yeah.
I mean, you cannot beat a good wind. You cannot beat a good wind. And we're the same in that way. And the nicer part of our character, of course, comes from our mother. What else can I say on television? I'm quizzing when I get home, I tell you. But, that's true, actually. It's actually true.
Yeah.
So could the pair of you act together now that your relationship is a bit better founded?
Oh, yes.
Yes, we're hoping to. Yeah. I mean, hoping to. Ken Branagh, you know, the great Kenneth Branagh, is a lovely fellow. And he's responsible, he's the only man actually who will hire me at the moment. And we're hoping to put The Tempest on, in which I'll play the old boy. That's why I've done this already. And she'll play my daughter in The Tempest, which would be nice, Prospero Miranda. That would be rather nice, wouldn't it?
Do you actually think that would further your relationship?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because
and Daddy's very private about his work, and I am as well. I mean, I don't like sharing what I do with anybody I'm having a relationship with. And Daddy's very much the same. So I think if we're actually in a rehearsal room together, it would really open things up. Yes.
Lucy and Richard, for the moment, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Closely in the audience are two people who have a great professional interest in this whole subject of parents and children. First of all, journalist Anna Rayburn, and then we have Carol Stone, who carried out a series of interviews with mums and children for her television program, which was called Mother of Mine. So what did you discover actually, Carol, about the relationship between mother and daughter?
Well, I think it's an extremely important part of your life. The reason I did the series was because I've always rather, although my mother's an atheist, thought of her, if there was a God, then my mother sort of personified it, because she was a very enlightened person, and I had a very strong bond. And I was quite surprised to find that friends of mine actually sort of more or less divorced their mothers. So I was interested to see what other people, and my particular series with people in public life. And I think the thing I felt was a bit like with Ken and his mother Ethel, that people are very, very much want approval from their mothers and from their parents. They want to feel that what they're doing has got their sanction, or otherwise they rebel against it. I think also that people of my generation feel that if only my mother, and I think particularly in Ken and Ethel, if my mother or my father had the chances I had, life could have been very, very different for them. So, and I think also in presence of your parents, you are stripped of all pretense. They really do know you backwards.
What did you discover about this unconditional love? Because many people will say that in a way the mother is the only person in the whole world who will give you this totally unconditional love.
Yes, I think that's true. I do know someone that was going to marry somebody, and she said the moment he said to me, well, my mother would have forgiven me, she thought he has not grown up. And I can see that. I think that is a point. I think I do feel there's nothing I could do that my mother and my father wouldn't have forgiven me for. I don't think it's necessarily a good thing, but I do think that in a way it gives you security. In another way, you wake up to the hard world when you meet the people that don't give it to you.
And was there a common thread, though, of things that do go adrift? I mean, whether it's the overprotective mother or the mother who wants to lead her life, for example, through the child?
I think there's a danger of leading life through the child. I think also there's a danger of parents wanting you to be something that you didn't want to be yourself. I remember one person I interviewed, his mother wanting to be a bishop. This was not what he wanted to be.
And did you touch at all on this subject that, as far as a mother is concerned, no woman is good enough for her son?
I think so, yes. I think that is true. I always remember my mother giving me advice whenever I started to try and do the cooking or to do any of the housework, and say to me, never do that, my dear. You'll have plenty of time when you're married. As my boyfriend says, that's probably why you're not married.
Now, Anna Rayburn has written extensively on the subject of family relationships, and over the years she has dealt with countless letters when she used to be an agony aunt, so a lot of experience there, Anna. You were listening to our three wonderful couples sitting here. What are your observations on their stories?
The thing that strikes me most forcibly is that we couldn't possibly sum up what makes a good parent out of these three couples. That would be totally unfair, because what makes a good parent for one child makes a bad parent for another child. It really is the luck of the draw, and you travel all the time. What your three couples highlighted for me, very poignantly I think, is the extraordinarily accepting nature of children. Children say, my mother and father, as Ken said, always discussed everything. Everything was, we were expected, if you believe in it, that's it, go with it, we'll get on with that. Then you had Gun and Ulrika saying, well, you know, she decided, so I got on with it, and then she decided different, and I came and joined her. And there's no point for those two people in having a great retrospective about should she have gone, and why did she go, and why didn't she take me with her. It was all down to the hairdryer. And then it was Richard and Lucy. I'm sorry, Lucy, I beg your pardon, it's my age. Saying, you know, we have, in this very nice, tactful way, yes, we have disagreed, and I wanted to say, did you throw something at him? Because I always wanted to. Oh, yeah. And I think that the private nature, to describe yourself rather charmingly, Richard, as saying, oh, I do love a good whinge. And you know, we all laugh at it because we're here, but if we lived with it, it might not nearly be so charming. And if you're a daughter, you see mother go out to the kitchen and go, and you know that you don't have to do, she's going to deal with it. So I was very moved by the differences, and I think the differences are terribly important.
Now, as our program today is all about families, it's very refreshing to see 5 generations of one family all sitting side by side in the audience. We have Florence Brooks, first of all, who's 96, and next to her is her daughter-in-law, Nancy. What has Florence said in the past about it?
Well, she's always enjoyed the family, and she's always said it takes a job to keep up with us all. But she does keep up with us and remembers every one of our birthdays.
Great, and we should just say that she's slightly hard of hearing. So
yes, she is. I'm sorry she's slightly hard, but that's what she's always said about the family.
Now, was it a bit of a shock to you to find yourself being a great grandmother, looking as young and fit as you are?
Oh, thank you. Yes, it was, but it was lovely, and another addition to the family, always welcome.
Do you think you all have a lot in common?
Yes, perhaps we do, but we all live separately, and we all have many interests in life, but we all keep very close together by phone and visiting. And our big highlight in life is to have a family party and a big get-together. We love it.
I should imagine, though, with a family as large as yours, you've disagreed quite a bit in the past.
We have in the past, but since we've all been grown up and we live separate lives and away from each other, we all get on very well.
Somebody told me at one stage that people used to say that you were like sisters, and this used to annoy you enormously.
Especially when my mum used to chime in and say, well, I'm the younger one. I don't think that was amusing at all.
I thought she liked a lot of fun. Did she ever upstage you a bit, maybe unwittingly?
I guess so. Yeah, if we're truthful.
What way do you think your relationship has developed with your daughter, looking back on the one you had with your own mum?
Really, on reflection, similar lines. We had Battle of the Wills when Siobhan was growing up, young teenage years. And before they get to 12, you can cope with them and you can get them to your way of thinking. And then they thought of it themselves, the idea. But when they get to be 12 and 13, they come to be individuals. And we always had a Battle of Wills. Yes, she wanted more freedom and I didn't. I thought she had plenty.
Would you go along with that, Siobhan?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, what carries through the generations, because I can see that there's a really strong link, because I think, especially because we're all blood related, the four of us now, that we're actually very, we strive for independence, and we're actually very powerful women, and powerful women living together don't necessarily, get on very well, because, you just spark each other off. And I mean, it's quite healthy. I mean, as long as you don't suppress that and you pretend to feel what you're not feeling and saying, no, I'm fine, we're a happy, jolly family. We're humanity, which is part of, clashing and disagreeing. I mean, it's just living together, isn't it?
The baby, by the way, is absolutely beautiful. But have you found that since the baby was born that maybe your understanding of your mother or the closeness has increased?
Absolutely. I mean, things like, 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in the morning. I mean, that's the stuff that women are made of. That's why women have babies. It's a very clear example. And, recently when I had Mother's Day, I mean, I actually felt, I know it's all a bit sort of commercial now, but I felt it really internally, this feeling of, wow, I never really understood actually. And there's much more to come, he's only 6 months old, so, this is only 6 months into it.
Well, I think it's just terrific to see the 5 generations here, and I want to thank you all very much. Now we're going to meet yet another very special family, the Don Baban. Sounds like the latest group, I think, but they clearly enjoy family life. They have 4 children of their own, but have adopted or fostered 40 more over the years. An achievement that recently won the Relates Award for Family of the Year, and rightly so. So congratulations to all of you. But you must have to have an abundance of love and attention to give all these children.
Well, we have.
Yeah, why do you think that
It's as simple as that, and also, we have had 15 children in the house at one time. At one Christmas, we had 15 children. We couldn't move for wrapping paper actually on the floor. But I am unemployed, obviously. I'm not alone. But when I'm like a house father, obviously, with me and Christine. And it's just being together. I mean, some of the children go to school, so obviously, other children that's left in the house, they can have input put into them then. Because you do it at school, then we get together at night. And when children come together, when kids come into the house that have problems, obviously, with abuse, etc., then when they realise that other children in my home have the same problems, after a couple of days of talking at breakfast, breakfast is a very good time, 15 bowls of cornflakes, etc. Like Mr. Bumble, in the morning, then they get talking. And once they realise that they're no different, then they open up.
You see, but as you've just pointed out, it's such hard work. I don't know how you keep sane half the time, but Christine, how do you just physically find enough time to cope with 15 children or 13, 20, whatever number you have in the house?
You just don't, it just works out that way. I love children, and children are my life. I can't live without children. They give you so much, what you can't get from adults, really. But you can learn a lot from children.
Do you have a totally different relationship, for example, with your own 4 compared to the other children you foster?
Oh no, that won't be fair, would it? They'd think they were special, which they know who they are, and we talk about different things and about being natural children and what they mean to us. And they also know, I always say to the adopted children who feel insecure at times, they were given to me. I couldn't choose what I got, but I chose you. So they feel special, but they understand why I've said this, you see.
So Lynette, how do you feel when you hear that yet another child is coming to join you in the house?
Excited.
Do you?
Yeah. If it's the same age as me, I feel not like my age. I get someone to play with instead of just sitting there watching all the rest of the kids enjoying themselves and I'm just there being bored.
And Matthew, you don't mind sharing everything, do you, in the house?
No, it's because we're one big family, you get used to sharing things. So, no, I don't mind sharing.
How do you feel, though, when they go away? Obviously, you must get very close to some of the children who join you. So how do you feel then when they've got to go back?
Cry a lot.
We all do.
You prepare
It doesn't get easier when they go. But that's part of what we've got to accept for what we do, and we always have to say, well, let's sit down and see what we started with, how they've changed, how they've got better. We feel we've given them more, but it does hurt a lot. People think fostering is easy, but believe me, it isn't.
Oh, I understand that.
You get them overnight and they stop for 2 years, you know.
That's right.
It's right, it's right.
It's like the mother-in-law comes for the weekend,
You're
says
not
a year.
supposed to get attached, actually, but it doesn't work that way.
Well, I think you did just a splendid job. Well done. Many congratulations on your award. Much deserved. Very good. A recent survey showed that 1 in 6 of Britain's families have a single parent, and Ivan Sokolov brought up his 2 young sons when he and his wife separated. And from this experience, he went on to found an organization called Parent Link. It's actually to help teach parents how to be good parents. I'm wondering, Ivan, just how you tackle that for a start. How can you actually teach people to be good parents?
Well, it's more about helping them actually change the things that they don't like and improve the things that they do, rather than, I'd say, teaching them to be good parents. And as Anna said, how do you decide what is a good parent? But it's mainly about helping people. You know, it's so easy for us to do what was done to us, or maybe to do absolutely the opposite, you know, just to repeat the patterns. So it's giving people the chance to realise that they can change, and that there are practical things that they could do differently. But starting to do it rather than just knowing it needs some help and support, and I think that's what Parent Link's really trying to give them, the help and support to do it differently.
So what are those practical things that you help them with?
Well, I mean, one example that kind of relates into what a lot of people have said is the whole issue of security and feelings, that being able to really acknowledge children's feelings, being able to talk openly, to being able to communicate well are absolutely critical. But if people have been brought up, if the parents have been brought up in families where that doesn't happen, they need some encouragement and some help to be able to listen to their children, to express their feelings, to acknowledge their children's feelings rather than jumping down their throats or telling them to, you know, zip it up and keep it to themselves. Practical little things like that.
Because you've analysed single parents, what effect do you think it has on the child not having both parents there?
I think it's very difficult. I mean, I think the security issue is the biggest thing. It was certainly the biggest thing for me. And I think the main reason why it was the biggest thing is that as a single parent for that period of time, with my marriage breaking up, I felt insecure. Now, how could I give security to my children when I felt desperately insecure? I think that's the biggest difficulty for a lot of single parents. We don't choose to be single parents. Well, not many people get the choice. And how do you provide the security, and how do you also provide the balance? Because men and women are different. And I think that boys and girls need the experience of living with men and with women. Maybe not at once. I mean, Ulrika's example was a good one. Maybe there are different times. And the same has happened with my children. They went back to live with their mum. And at the age of 12, my eldest son decided that he wanted to come and live with his dad. So he then came back and lived with me for another 5 years, because he needed the switch. He needed a balance of the energy to be with a man, I think.
And do you think that a relative of the family or a friend can actually fill that gap?
I think, yes, I think other people can fill that gap. And I think one of the saddest things, not just for single families, but for the kind of concentration on nuclear families, is that we don't allow non-parents to have contact with our children. We've become too isolated generally. You know, I mean, the grandparent, you know, having the 5 generations is lovely, but often that's not realistic. You know, that my grandparents were all dead by the time I was 3, but I would have loved to have been able to live in some kind of a context where I could have adopted, you know, pseudo-parents from next door or down the street or around the corner, so I have other adults that I could relate to.
Well, let me just take it on a little bit, because as both children and parents grow older, many find that the roles in the families begin to reverse as the children start to look after their parents. Now, I want to come back to Anna on this point. Do you think, therefore, that you know, children can become friends, if you like, with parents, as opposed to having the, you know, just the parent-child relationship, that the roles can reverse?
Oh, I think there is a part of that relationship which is to do with friendship, but I think you have to be very careful with it when you're younger, because I'm always haunted by something which I read in the Reader's Digest many years ago about a boy, father saying to a boy, I want to be your friend, and the boy saying, Dad, I've got friends, I want you to be my father.
Yes.
And I think there's a lot in that, and a lot in that for mothers too. I don't think that's it's supposed to be assigned to one sex. It applies right across the board. But I do think that as people get older, there is a change, and I think there has to be a change. The first one is that you have to agree to be separate and be different. But as the parents become older, then the grown-up children have to assume responsibilities for the parents, which are sometimes.
Мессершмитта и других немецких проектов, они полностью изменили конструкцию.
Have been won by the Prime Minister and independence leader Milo Đukanović. Mr. Đukanović told his cheering supporters it was a victory for his pro-European policy. His coalition party campaigned for the split with Serbia, and now it wants to join the European Union and NATO. Well, still to come on this programme, we'll be looking at how President Bush's response to the 9/11 attacks has changed America.
Enter a new era with 3D. Dassault Systems. See what you mean.
This week in Talking Movies Hollywoodland, starring Adrian Brody and Ben Affleck, plus his one of modern cinema's most original talents, filmmaker Michel Gondry. His new film stars Jack Black.
IMF and World Bank's annual meetings this week in Singapore is the year's biggest gathering of financial leaders. We'll be speaking to the movers and shakers of global finance. For more, join us on World Business Report.
As America commemorates the 5th anniversary of 9/11, I'll be live in New York looking at the lasting impact of those attacks. Join us here on BBC World.
This week, we'll be finding out if security software companies are ready for Microsoft Vista, and we'll be taking a trip around IFA, Europe's largest consumer electronics show.